There is not a square inch in the whole domain of our human existence over which Christ, who is sovereign over all, does not cry, mine.
Nestled in the heart of a quaint village, the bustling public square hums with life, framed by cobblestone pathways and shaded by ancient oak trees. This central hub, with its charming cafes and artisan shops, is a vibrant tapestry of local culture and community. Now, just beyond the square's lively ambiance, a serene vineyard stretches across rolling hills, its neatly aligned vines basking in the golden sun. The vineyard, a symbol of the region's rich heritage, produces some of the finest wines, inviting visitors to savor the harmony between nature and tradition. Together, the public square and vineyard create a perfect blend of energy and tranquility, offering a unique glimpse into the soul of a community. Now, you can imagine the resources it must take for a town and a vineyard to flourish. Well, friends, today we're going to speak with a man who appreciates both and has his hands in both, and does so for the glory of God. Well, I'm grateful to have a newish friend, if you will, someone I've enjoyed getting to know, Ron Robertson of Gig Harbor, Washington. Ron, thanks, man, for being with me.
Thanks, Case. It's been fun getting to know you. I feel like you're part of the Rat Pack and Brotherhood as a result of our daily devotional group.
Yeah, so
around the country.
Ron's invited me into a devotional call with some other men, and these are guys all over the country, and it's 10 o'clock Eastern time, and I think y'all are at, 7 a.m. Pacific time?
Yep.
And it's a good time. Now, you're sitting there on, is it Puget Sound?
Yeah, we're actually located on the Tacoma Narrows on the Gig Harbor side.
Right.
And we look back to the east towards Mount Rainier.
Yeah. Well, most people are listening, but for those on YouTube, turn your laptop. Let us see a little bit of the view you showed me. You said a minute ago a yacht with a helicopter on it was cruising by.
Yeah, it is. I'm sorry, I'll be a little. It unfortunately is out of view now.
Yeah. Well, if you're listening, Ron is showing us a beautiful view up the cliff or hill, if you will, looking out over the sound. There's the mainland across the waterway.
Believe it or not, there is a mountain out there.
Rainier, right?
Yep, 14,410 feet.
Please tell Bill Gates to pull back around when we're done and pick you up.
Yeah.
Well, to our viewers and friends participating, welcome to Nuance, where we seek to be faithful in the public square. I'm Case Thorpe, and please like, subscribe, and share this podcast. It really helps us to expand our audience. Well, let me tell you a little bit about our guest. Ron Robertson graduated from Western Washington University in 1980 and then began to work for Young Life. And if you don't know Young Life, friends, you need to. It's a fantastic national, I guess I would say international now, Ron, right? Ministry that reaches youth and teenagers in a powerful way. Well, for 3 years, he was a director at Peninsula High School and went on to be an area director and then work for the Young Life Foundation. In 1998, Ron then went on to found Asset Strategies as a registered investment advisor and grew it to $840 million. 2014, he purchased Summit Advisor Solutions, a $1.8 billion trading platform, and sold that in 2017. Currently, he's the CEO of E2P Partners, a startup dedicated to assisting registered investment advisors with assets under management ranging from 50 to 300 million. The company's mission is to help them increase the value of their practice. Ron, let me stop there real quick. E2P, what's the E2P from?
Equity Enhancement Partners.
Ah, okay. Well,
that was a name originated by our friend Keith Gregg.
Oh, I get it. Equity Enhancement. That's the two E's.
Right.
E2.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Ron and his wife, Katie, own Canan's Feast Winery in Carlton, Oregon. And Katie is a significant leader in her own right she also has a Young Life background, and she's the founder and leader in a women's ministry called The Anchor, a ministry born to encourage women in faith and leadership, now in 65 cities across the U.S. Just a fantastic work. And if you're watching, you can see Ron is adorned in Anchor swag. Yeah. Dude, you got to send me one of those.
I will.
I don't know that I get to wear it much here in Orlando, Florida, but you know. So Ron has studied at Fuller Theological Seminary along the way. He enjoys boating, mountain biking, skiing, and he and Katie have 3 children, Karina, Annika, and Eric. And I'm suspecting maybe a few grands.
3 grands.
Oh, that's great.
Actually, our son-in-law is an associate pastor at Story Hill Presbyterian in Davidson, North Carolina. It's an EPC.
Mm-hmm.
A great, great church. I believe it's the first church building constructed in Davidson in 100 years.
Oh my. Wow.
I believe that's correct.
Well,
if it's not, you can sue me.
Well, and to think, I mean, Davidson's such a place of Presbyterian history and heritage with the college. That's significant. Well, friends, I've invited Ron to come talk to me both about the financial advising side of his career and then the venting side. And I'm just curious too, Ron, how those two came together. So just give us a sense of your journey, and particularly through Young Life, and then why and how did the call happen then to financial advising?
Yeah, I was a typical sophomore in high school, insecure, trying to find my way socially. I had a band of really good friends, and one of my best buddies, Rick Burroughs' older sister Barbie, invited these 2 skinny little freshmen to go to Young Life Club. And we got there, and it was in a home, and it was packed full of people. They took all the furniture out, and there's maybe 150 kids sitting on the floor. And the Young Life leader got up. They did crazy skits and songs, and I heard about Jesus in a way that I'd never heard before. I grew up in a traditional church, and it's like, well, how can you have a religious service without who's lighting the candles, for crying out loud? And it was magical, and my life has never been the same since. Young Life really understands evangelism, and the whole theory of their methodology is to build a relationship with a teenager you enter their world. You find if they're into sports, you enter that. If they're into drama, you enter that. The key is that, and the premise is that the gospel walks across a bridge of friendship.
That's good.
And my Young Life leader is in our town, and
still,
I still see him. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to do with my life, is lead others to Christ. And I became a volunteer Young Life leader at Curtis Junior High in 1976.
Wow.
And I recently had dinner with my original campaigner group a couple weeks ago at the Tides, which I believe you've visited. And it's interesting when you share those formational years. It's almost like time stops when you get back together. Wow. It's just rich, and we laugh and fellowship, and it is just truly an amazing ministry. Worldwide, I believe they're reaching 2.7 million kids a year.
Wow.
The growth in the U.S. has been flat for about 10 years, but internationally, it's growing in excess of 35% a year.
Wow.
It's just amazing what's going on.
Wow.
I'm a part of a group that's scheming and planning to see if we can't increase the growth in the U.S.
Right.
And I'll keep you posted, but it's a pretty fascinating group of men and women that are dreaming and praying together.
Well, Young Life is alive and well here in Central Florida. And our minister of family life, Brett Allen, in our church, is a former Young Life guy of 25 years. And he brings so many of the Young Life ways of doing things and the spirit of that work into our church. And it's just wonderful. Wonderful.
I love it.
Well, now you served with Young Life, but then you shift to the financial world. And I know you to be a sincere man of the Lord. Like, clearly his call must have been involved with that. Tell us about that transition.
Well, there was an interim step. I spent 5 years working with a giant in the faith, Peb Jackson.
Oh, yes. I know Peb.
Yeah, he passed
or
away.
Peb, yeah.
Yeah, whatever, about 24 months ago.
Yeah, it wasn't long.
But someone that I truly love and respect and admired. And I got to pal around with him doing crazy events, from fly fishing to the first time I ever went mountain biking was with Peb. Scared me to death. But it was really a continuation of what we did with kids. It was really building bridges of friendship with high net worth adults that had capacity to give currently and or make a deferred gift to Young Life. Mm-hmm. Having been in the ministry, I'm keenly aware that it really takes people with resources to really get the gospel out there and moved and get people in a position where they can really hear about the Lord in a winsome fashion.
It does.
And I decided I spent 5 years asking people for money, and I thought, I think I would rather be writing checks than asking for checks. And so that kind of was the genesis of starting my firm, and it was a great ride.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Where did Christian faith and convictions intersect with the way you ran your businesses?
Probably the most overt way was sincerely caring for people and listening to them and being available to answer any questions they might have about life and faith. We did about $1 billion of estate plans over a 10-year period. And when you're focusing on estate planning, you get to know people very intimately, and you know which kids are responsible and you know which kids are irresponsible. And you work to solve those issues around, money and how money can be a real blessing or it can be a curse. And it takes a fair amount of wisdom to craft a plan in such a way that it encourages good behavior. Our philosophy was we didn't want to endow kids to do nothing. And, be obsessed with materialism. But
how often with a client did they come with that realization, or you had to help them see it?
Intuitively, I would say they all knew it. It was having the courage to just say, you don't have to treat them all the same. And we saw some really, really interesting things. We crafted a plan where one of the sons was very irresponsible, and the patriarch didn't want to endow him to drink and take drugs the rest of his life. And in order for him to get money out of his trust, he got a multiple of either 1099 or W-2 earnings that he would have to present for the first 10 years to the trustee. So if he worked hard and made some money, he was very blessed. But it's funny, it really worked out well.
Yeah.
It gave him the incentive to get clean and be a productive human being.
I've got a buddy who's an attorney, and he has shared, and this was early in his career, he was surprised and shocked about, like you say, how many intimate conversations he would come into with families who were dealing with some really tough situations. And he realized, and he said to me one day, he said, Case, I realize I've got an unbelievable platform to be able to share truth and show love and point people to scriptural principles. And I hear that in what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing.
Mm-hmm. Tricky because?
Well, you just really have to, no plan is the same. You really want to listen and understand the heart, the passion of Gen 1, and not to be manipulative, but set things up so that it encourages the right behavior for the next generation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And even in the third generation, as far as that goes. But yeah, it takes a lot of time to really understand what they really want to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. How hard is it to, so Gen 1, do they usually are they able to articulate what they really want, or you have to massage that and grow that out of them?
It's really a heuristic process. They have ideas. We're talking about entrepreneurs that started, almost all of my clients were entrepreneurs, built a business,
okay,
and exited, kind of 20 million-ish, really very successful people. And so they had plenty of ideas when it came to the table. And a lot of times it was just from our experience, we had some solutions that they hadn't thought of. And we could bring that along. But it was a rich experience.
Yeah, an entrepreneur is already going to be thinking that way and wanting to design things that way.
Yeah.
Well, as you grew your work and grew in an understanding of your work, tell us about your faith journey along those ways, I guess, marriage and children and those things coming along.
Well, I wish I could say everything was nice and rosy and power through life without any hiccups. But we started our company in 98 and bootstrapped it. And by 2005, we were doing very well. I bought my dream yacht, a 68-foot Sunship. It was a $2 million boat, and felt like I'd pretty much arrived. And actually, it's ironic that we're talking right now, but 2005, June 21st, I was down in LA and thinking to myself, this is the longest day of the year. And little did I know that I'd be at LAX and I'd get a phone call from our family physician. And my heart just sunk. It's like, whoa, this cannot be good. And Dr. Stewart was informing me that Cana, our oldest, was diagnosed with leukemia.
Right.
And it was a bad one. And the sense of terror and horror of flying back from LA, I jumped on a plane and turned around and came back. And that began a journey that was rich and painful. And being on the Young Life staff, I was always very vigilant to keep my kids safe. You have a lot of strangers that come into the home, and I always kept a careful eye on my kids, didn't want any harm to come to them. And actually, every now and then, my son will joke about me being a little paranoid about safety and injuries and stuff. But every night, I would pray with my kids. And one of the common themes was that they would really know the Lord and that He'd keep them healthy and from harm. And with Cana, after 14 years of the same prayer, to have her get a terminal illness was devastating to my faith. Yeah. And that began an ordeal that was physically demanding. It was AMML, and the chemo they give those kids is just horrendous. I mean, it's a cocktail of four different. The only one I remember, arubamycin, because it was red, and it was horrible for her. But I was her exclusive platelet donor. When they beat the kid up with chemo, it prevents their bone marrow from developing platelets and white blood cells, etc. And her body would reject third-party platelet donors. And so whenever she was in treatment, every other day, every third day, they go in and harvest my platelets to keep her going. Mm-hmm. And as a result, I had to stay out of the public. It was almost like living with COVID. I had to stay healthy. Mm-hmm. And but yeah, Cana was the most beautiful, smart, articulate, athletic woman. Just an absolute delight. We're avid snow skiers, and when Cana was in 8th grade, she could go anywhere with me, which was very fun.
Right.
And she's great. But we went through the stem cell transplant and the whole procedure, and then she died in 2010. And I really found myself becoming very bitter and angry. And here I was a good kid. I behaved well. I didn't participate in bad stuff. And here I'd served the Lord. And
right.
Therefore, my kid shouldn't get cancer. And it was, in hindsight, it's probably a pretty immature reaction. But I found myself just so angry and just pretty much decided that this whole God thing, it's not for me.
Wow.
And I lived a horrible existence. Any of you that have lost a child, the bad news is it takes a long time to start feeling better. And the good news is after 5 years of dealing with grief, it starts to improve. But I had kind of an interesting. Do you want to move to another topic, or should I follow?
No. I'm keep going. This is good. Just to hear your struggle.
Yeah. So I just really, it was very challenging. On one of the anniversaries of her passing was April 26th, 2010. We were up in Roach Harbor, and one of my friends sent me a video of Stephen Curtis Chapman singing in a parking garage, and it was the song Glorious Unfolding. And this might have been year 7 after her death, something like that. And one of the lines, and Stephen Curtis Chapman and Mary Beth, wonderful people, their little 5-year-old Maria was run over in front of the whole family in their driveway.
I've read about this, yes.
Yeah. And so Glorious Unfolding talks about the spiritual struggle of, as a male, I feel like I need to take care of my kids and protect them. And the whole treatment and experimental stuff that's coming at you, it's very overwhelming. And I found myself being plagued with second guessing about, the treatments. Here the top researchers in the world are going, we can go this way or this way. And I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But one of the lines in that song is, lay your head on your pillow tonight, stop trying to figure it out. And as I listened to that song and Stephen singing that, the Holy Spirit just penetrated my heart, just in a huge way. And I knew that God really was the Lord of the universe, and he did care for me. And I had really evolved into a transactional faith, which in hindsight is pretty immature. But I wore that pretty well. So I listened to it 3 or 4 times, and I cry every time I listen to the song.
Even still.
And what's that?
Even still.
I can get through it now.
Yeah.
But I showed it to Katie, and we happened to be in Roach Harbor on the 26th of April. Half of Karina's ashes are in Roach Harbor, and the other half are up at the Malibu Club in Canada at the Young Life Camp. And so it's a really special place for us. And so I played for Katie. Katie was moved as well. And I said to her, I go, man, I want to meet Stephen Curtis Chapman. And Katie says, well, why don't you text Brandon Heath and see if he can see, Brandon's a good friend of ours, and see if you can set that up. So I texted Brandon, and Brandon gets right back to me. He goes, dude, it's done. I'm having coffee with him right now. And
Thank you, Lord.
Yeah. And a few months later, Brandon was touring with Stephen and Third Day, Mac Powell, and they had a day off, and Brandon said, hey, you want to take us out in your boat? And I said, sure. So fast forward, Katie and Stephen and I sat on the back of our boat going around Lake Washington, and we talked for hours about losing a child and faith and theology and personal experience, and it was unbelievable experience. And Mary Beth and I have more of the similar perspective on life, and
this is
Stephen
Stephen's
and
wife.
Katie,
Stephen's wife.
yeah, and Katie and Stephen have a very similar approach to faith, and theirs is much more mature than mine. Where Katie obviously misses our daughter very much, but her reaction is, I trust the Lord. It's gonna be fine. And after a while, we're gonna be together anyway. I mean, she's a rock. She is my inspiration, really. But long story short, we ended up getting to spend a bunch of time with Mary Beth and Stephen, and it was just rich to sit around with someone that had been through the same experience and be able to find it. I think the most healing part of it was just understanding. They'd had a whole bunch of counseling that Katie and I hadn't had the privilege of participating in, but just really learning that the way that people deal with grief is very different from one person to the next. And we really started getting some tools on how to not drive each other nuts. 95% of marriages fail that lose a child.
I've read that.
In such a fashion. And it was a miracle. And I thought it was one of those breadcrumbs along the way where you just go, wow, I think the Lord is there and he does care. He hasn't forgotten me and abandoned me. But that was a big, huge ordeal. Subsequent to that, I've become good friends with Steve French and Dale Armstrong. They run the Signatory. It's a donor advised fund. They're both entrepreneurs that approach Christian community and deploying capital like businessmen. Steve was a private equity guy on Wall Street. But for the last year, we've been palling around doing events with folks and dreaming and scheming about how can we have impact with the days we have left. I'm 66. Steve is 70, but we're youthful. But I don't think there's enough golf that I can play that would bring as much satisfaction as using my God-given position and talent to be a fly on the wall and participate in growing the kingdom. I feel like the Republic is in a point of crisis, and the only thing that I think could really save it would be massive numbers of folks embracing, the life-giving gospel of Jesus. Yeah.
Ron, I really want to thank you for sharing that very difficult journey. And you talk about now at this stage of life and the impact that you can have and leave behind. I see in your early life that passion from the young life perspective, and then your journey with your child, perhaps realigning some priorities and values and recognizing it's not just your talent, but it's also your story.
Yeah. And, as I look back, I mean, I hate to say there were blessings. When you have a couple extra bucks, it's pretty easy to think you're pretty special. And I look back and I'm disgusted by my arrogance and pride, and it's just it's the true measure of a man, that when tragedy comes, how do you handle it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I would say I'm not entirely happy with how I handle. I wish I could have done better, but it is what it is.
Well, it's real. It's life. Have you and Katie had a chance to pass along your lessons, to speak to others who've lost a child?
Yeah, that happens quite a bit. Pretty much, routinely we do that, actually. So
very special. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Tell us how you came to this winery and what kind of difference it's made in your life.
Well, Martin, Barrett, and Gino founded the winery, and after probably about 4 years of being in business, they went out and raised some capital, and there are probably 10 of us that ponied up, and they're all just brilliant, wonderful believers, and it's really been a source of fellowship, of guys finding an excuse to get together in Carlton, Oregon, at a beautiful facility, and we have to barrel taste every now and then. But the partnership really has grown out. It was, based on the fellowship of the brotherhood, and it's been a great experience. If I had $1 for every time I was told this is the last time we're going to have a capital call, I would have a lot more money. But I mean, it lost money for probably 15 years, and I'm proud to say that it's made money now for a while, maybe six years. But it's been a great experience. I think being around Patrick, our winemaker, is a rich experience. He has his master's from UC
Davis.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I know of another friend that went to get his Vintner's degree, I think it's called.
Yep, that's exactly right. But you start to learn about all of the nuances that go into winemaking and caring for a vineyard. We don't own any of the vineyards. We are contract growers, but Martin is a phenomenal connoisseur of wine and a student of how to run a vineyard, and he got contracts for the winery. Probably 25 years ago. In a new viticulture region called Red Mountain, before anyone knew what it was. And Jim Holmes, who literally, this is just outside of Hanford where they developed the nuclear bomb.
Okay.
And he's literally a nuclear scientist and a lover of wine. And he did all this research and determined that Red Mountain had everything you need to grow great world-class grapes.
This is Red Mountain, Oregon?
No, it's actually in Washington.
Okay.
Eastern Washington. It's south of Yakima.
Got it.
And being a scientist, he knew all the parameters that really needed to go into the perfect vineyard. And one is exposure to the sun. The other is, the pH balance of the soil. You want to be on a hill. What creates your sugar content, the Brix level inside of the grape, is you want to have it hot and then very cold. Okay. So that delta of hot and cold cold nights really makes a huge difference in the quality of the wine. And one thing I really didn't ever really appreciate is that all of the flavor in a glass of wine, it actually comes from the skin. It doesn't come from the heart of the grape.
Okay.
And one thing that's unique about Red Mountain is it's on the east side of the Cascades, and so we have the Pacific Ocean's 55 degrees, and the inland portion of Washington State gets extremely hot, 100 degrees
and arid
in the summer,
right?
And you have these natural thermals that occur almost every day, and what happens that makes our vineyard unique is the wind comes down the Yakima River, and then you have the vineyard up on a mountain above the river. And what happens is the wind comes down and it kicks up the little bits of sand and particles of soil, and it hits the skin of the grape. And in order for that grape to survive, it has to become very thick and robust. And it's this unique place in nature that God made, that all the elements exist to create some of the best big red wines in the world. Right across the street from Ciel del Cheval is Cosita Creek. And Cosita Creek, I believe, is the first 100-point cab in Washington State. And it's just it's a lot of fun winemaking. And then, Patrick says, you can't put into a good bottle of wine what the Lord hasn't, put into the grape. But there's a lot of science that goes into manufacturing the wine, past that. We're very involved in the vineyard itself and dropping a certain percentage of the clusters to make the grapes, more refined and robust. But
I found this TV series. It's actually Drops of God on Apple Plus, Drops of God. But when you talk about the sunlight and the angles and such, they do go into that. And
do they?
It is a amazingly complex thing.
Yeah.
Now, Canaan's Feast, did it come named that? Is that something y'all came to?
Yeah, actually, Martin and Gino named it. It's where the first miracle happened
in Scripture,
in the Bible.
with Jesus.
Yeah, in the Scripture, where they ran out of wine. And kind of an interesting story behind our original logo is Martin really wanted to capture, the miracle of turning water into wine. And they hired an artist, a sculptor, I believe he is French, and they wanted him to design our logo. And this guy was not a believer, didn't particularly have a spiritual interest. And so to become acquainted with the miracle at Cana, he read all 4 versions of it in the Scripture. And he comes back to us, and these 2 hands are going down into the base of wine and coming up.
Okay.
And then there's red wine coming down over the hands.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, that is cool. And what he noticed was, if you look at every miracle that Jesus performed, he touches someone. The blind man, he spit on the ground,
Sure,
put the mud on his eyes. But the only miracle that there isn't a reference to Jesus touching is the turning water into wine. And so our artist, in his mind's eye, said, in keeping consistent with all of the other miracles.
Wow, that's great.
I see Jesus putting his hands in the water, lifting him up, and it's perfect, the best wine ever, and to be shared and enjoyed, with the friends at the wedding feast.
Sure. Oh, that's great.
It's beautiful, beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And subsequent to that, the designer said this. The quote was, "This Jesus guy is pretty cool," and ended up giving his life to him.
Oh, my. Okay.
Yeah, pretty cool story.
Yeah, this Jesus guy, you said? This Jesus guy is pretty cool.
It's pretty cool.
Wow.
There's something about the person of Jesus. I just don't know how you can't get excited when you really take a deep look at who he is. I mean, religion, you get man involved in something, it's going to get really screwed up in a big hurry. But if you can strip away all of the stuff that we corrupt and we can just look at the person of Jesus, it's like, wow, this is something really special and divine. Wow.
Ron, what a vision, and what a good word to end on. So I think we need to have a collaborative feast at Cana's Feast and invite our listeners to come, and we'll just have a great big evening of hospitality and fellowship, and that would be beautiful.
We can arrange that. Carlton, Oregon. Yep. Our facility, if you go to the website, there are pictures. It's a gorgeous facility. Yeah. I think it's the prettiest one in Carlton. There are over 50 wineries now in Carlton.
Oh my.
So if you hire a car and you go do tasting.
And they sign you up for all their wine clubs.
Yes, of course.
We've done that in Napa before, and I noticed, you get 2 or 3 glasses in and you're all of a sudden signed up for 3 different clubs.
And they have your credit card.
Well, as newlyweds, Jody and I did that, and we came home as members of 3 clubs, and I pretty quickly realized we can't afford this. Well, Ron, thank you. I really appreciate all you've shared. I started in mind on investing in winery, and your journey with your daughter is just very moving, and very much appreciate that. Well, friends, if you want to learn more, go to canasfeastwinery.com, canasfeastwinery.com. It is a beautiful site, and you can learn more. And also for Ron's business, e2ppartners.com. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today. Be sure to like and share. It really helps us to get the word out. Leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. Visit collaborativeorlando.com for all sorts of more content, and you'll find us across the social media platforms. Don't forget Nuance Formed for Faithfulness, a weekly 10-minute devotional for the working Christian that follows the Christian liturgical calendar. I want to thank our sponsor for today, the Stein Foundation. I'm Case Thorpe, and God's blessings on you.